Greetings, fellow quitters, and welcome back to the Command Q podcast. We're your hosts. I'm John Pelfrey.
And I'm Maari Casey.
Freelancers may not have to endure traditional interview situations, but we do still have to pitch projects, introduce ourselves to clients, and find new leads at networking events. If years of being a solopreneur have left your interview skills rusty, it's normal to fall back on coming off as formal, polite, or possibly a little stiff. Today, we're tackling the question, how much personality is too much personality? And how do you make yourself professionally memorable, but only in a good way? So, Maari, our warm-up question here, do you think people expect creatives to be a little eccentric?
Yes, I think so. I think that if you were coming in a creative position, like interviewing for art director, copywriter, producer, video, whatever, and you come in kind of in a full suit, you're very stiff and like overly professional, I think that would catch people off guard. I've actually seen it because I've been in the position to interview, especially young people. Usually if I can get a hold of them before the interview, I'm like, don't come in a suit. I mean, you can come in like nice and tidy, but coming in like a full suit, like you're going to interview at a bank when you're interviewing with a creative agency, it's not looked down upon, but it's kind of like, oh, like that's cute. But I think that they expect creatives to have a little bit of color that makes them unique.
Yeah, I would agree. I did the first job that I got out of college. I wore a suit to that interview. I got the job and it was at a software company, but it was 2000. So back then, even if you worked in a startup software, like you still wore slacks and a button-up shirt to work. Like the world was just different. And so it was normal to walk into an interview in a suit. But that was 25 years ago. And I think now if I walked into that same exact environment and wore exactly what I wore back then, people would be like, dude, where's your hoodie? You know, where are your stickers? Do you not wear Allbirds?
Where's you wearing Allbirds?
Like, you know, the times have changed and you definitely need to be put together though. I think it's important to have an identity and to express yourself through that. But you always want to make sure that your clothes fit, they're not wrinkly, you know, all of those basic things. I also think it's really important, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, to have a signature thing that's yours that's memorable. Especially if you're going to go into a place where you don't know people or you're interviewing and trying, like if you're the one person that walks in and wears red somewhere on you, whether that's like an undershirt or a scarf or, you know, your shoes or whatever, or you're the one person that does something a little bit different than everyone else, it does make you that little bit more memorable because you'll remember, you'll be like, yeah, that's the red hat guy or, you know, whatever.
Right.
I mean, it was a little weird, but it also kind of worked on him somehow. And I'm not saying that everybody has to be outrageous, but it's just have that one little thing that makes you memorable. Oh, they had really nice shoes. Oh, you know, they have a nice watch, whatever it is, that's yours. To me, that's something to sort of think about or consider, but it should only be one thing. That's the other part. Don't come in looking like you just bought everything off the rack at TJ Maxx and wore it all together at the same time.
I agree. I think it's like, you have to consider that they're interviewing a lot of people at one time. So like, other than hopefully your skills and your bubbly, wonderful personality, what is the one thing that's going to help to separate you? And I say this with resumes too. It's like, if you're submitting resumes and it's like basically a white paper with black type on it, it's like that stands out 0 times. But think about your what you're wearing and how you're presenting yourself essentially is like, I need to stand out. So like when people walk away, like, oh yeah, that's the guy with the red shoes. Like that is a good thing to have as long as, you know, it feels appropriate. But I think that's a really smart way to help visually, because, you know, it's like when you interview a bunch of people, even if say 10 of them are great, that's still 10 people you got to kind of differentiate in your mind. That's really hard unless there's something that separates them.
That is very hard. And especially if you're on a Zoom call or something, it's also really tricky in that world. If you're in person too, another trick one, and this one you have to be careful with, but the way that you smell and fragrances, smell is tied to memory. And so if you smell good, and what I mean by that is like not overly cologne-y or perfumey at all. But, you know, one, you don't want to smell bad, but two, if again, it's like having sort of a signature little thing. If you smell a certain way and that can be communicated just a little bit, that will help and it will stick in. So think about things like that too as another one. You want to, I guess what this is coming down to is tie things down to all of the senses. That's what I would say. Like if you're going to create a memory for something, you want a specific sound, a specific smell, a specific look. When you shake someone's hand, you want it to be, you know, memorable in terms of the touch. People have talked about this a million times, but you don't want it weak. You don't want it floppy. You want it nice and firm and straightforward and simple. Any of those types of things. So, think about all the senses and practice each one. And if you can nail one little thing about each of those, I think you'll stand out a lot compared to others.
Yeah. I love the idea of scent. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's overlooked, meaning you put too much of something on. And it makes a difference. I think I remember hearing this sometime. I think this is like an Oprah episode from 15 years ago that it's like men are really attracted to the smell of pumpkin pie and lavender. Not that I'm saying you want to like smear pumpkin pie on you, but like lavender is an easy scent to put on. I always feel like putting lotion on is a safe way to have perfume on that's not perfume.
Right.
But I love that idea. And that could be the way that you stand out. It's like, oh yeah, it's a person that smelled like pumpkin pie or it's a person that smelled like lavender.
Yeah.
Because scent is very memorable, especially when someone comes in a room and like lean forward and shake your hand.
Yep.
And that's a good thing to include. I like that. Think about all the senses.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want to walk in with like a playlist in the background. Like you don't need walk-in music to your interview, but you could discuss music, as like an icebreaker thing.
You can, but it's also like even your voice. I think it's important to practice your interview and meeting a person voice. And by that, I mean, if you're the type of person that has a very high-pitched voice or a very low-pitched voice, and it doesn't sit in the middle where people can hear and their ears are tuned, you need to be able to adjust and change that so that people can hear you. Let's say I have a very low voice. I'm a double bass. If I sing in a choir, I'm a double bass. I can sing way below the bass clef. So what that means is if there's an air conditioner running in the background and I'm speaking in my natural voice, you cannot hear me at all.
Yeah.
And so if those two things are happening, you can't hear me, you can't understand me, I become mumbly. So what do I need to do? I need to raise the pitch of my voice just a little bit when we speak. And I've learned to adjust. This isn't my voice right now is not naturally where I want to sit and speak. But I know that in order to be intelligible to people, I need to raise the pitch of my voice to sit in that space where they can hear it. And it's the same thing if you have a very high voice or a very quiet voice, if you tend to whisper, adjust that. You can still make it your own and make it authentic, but you want to be aware that people need to hear you. And as my mother drilled into my head, you must enunciate.
Yes. Enunciate. Enunciate all the things.
Yes. But that's a little pet peeve for me because if I can't understand you or I feel like you're mumbling or not making an effort to speak out, then that comes across to me as you're very shy. And then when it comes to work, you may not be the type of person to, let's say, defend your work or be able to present it in a way that you can sell it to people. And when you're creative, you have to be able to sell your ideas. And the first thing there is your voice has to command people's attention. And that doesn't mean that you have to be forceful, but it does mean that you have to be able to hear it.
Right. That's important. Yeah.
Yeah. The other one is a little pet peeve for me too. I struggle with people that have, I don't know what you call it, that modern day sort of valley girl thing that's in people's voices. There's a term for that and I've lost it. If you tend to naturally speak like that in conversation, that's fine. But when you're in a business sort of situation, getting rid of those weird little sounds or vocal tics would be also very helpful. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The likes can get to, and it's funny because as you start to work with people, you start to pick up on their words. What is it? Is it like, I have somebody that says, what is it? Yeah, I just said, I have somebody who says, he repeats the same word over and over again. Like, figuratively or intentionally or or what do you think? And I think figuring out what those words are and practicing. The other piece of it is also, I think you're talking about this where it's like your inflection is up and down, like it's a question. So even if you're not asking a question, it feels like you're asking a question based on the sounds, which comes across as insecure, comes across as, maybe a little flighty. So figuring out, like, I think it's really important to practice your interview, even just conversation practice with somebody. Be like, what vibe am I giving you? Like, what are you picking up from me and how I'm talking? Because they might say things like, well, it sounds like you're asking me a bunch of questions, but you're asking them and you're not letting me answer them, or just the tone of your voice makes me feel like you don't really know what you're talking about or whatever. And that's really helpful information to get because you can correct those things. It just takes practice.
You're right. I think you have a good point.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying? Yes. I think the term for that is upspeak. Jenna, our producer, put that in over here. So yeah, anytime your voice or your inflection kind of rises at an inappropriate place, if you record yourself, you can start to notice these things and listen to these things, or if anyone ever points it out to you, these are opportunities for you to become more memorable. And the other side of that is if you're someone who has, let's say, upspeak or something like that, yes, you are memorable for sure, but it might not be in the way that you want it to be.
Right.
So that's another part of this too. All right. So we addressed this in another pod as well, but I think something that has to go along with the quit being forgettable is just a reminder about Zoom backgrounds and, putting something in your background that is unique to you and having a space that is prepared for a meeting. I think those things are really, really important. We had a freelancer once that used to take client calls in their car, like going through the drive-through.
Right. Don't do that.
Like, yeah, you're going to be memorable, but again, not in a good way, So let's not do the calls in the drive-through or in your car in the middle of rush hour traffic or anything like that. Let's get settled, get into a place where you can be comfortable and where the background is clear and you have a microphone or earbuds or something that is not a speakerphone so that you can be heard. Those would be like some little things there. So has it become more important to let potential clients know who you are as a person? What do you think about this one? There was a time when being impersonal and being very matter of fact was very important.
Right.
Have we loosened up?
I mean, I think we have, because now like we work in our houses. So it's like by the fact that we are sharing our homes with our clients a lot of times, that opens up a lot of personality. I think it kind of comes down to who you are, like what's authentic to you. Is it authentic to you to share family pictures with your clients? Like maybe some it is, maybe some it isn't. Maybe for some people that's an absolute no. I think it's whatever feels comfortable. I think where it gets to be too far is if we're, text messaging, calling, there's boundaries. We talk about boundaries a lot as far as how important boundaries are. And it can get really hard to maintain them when you have a client that you work with, or maybe you go on a shoot with, or you travel with, and they become a friend. And I think you have to really be clear about where your boundaries lie with that, because, it can be a relationship. We start texting people, and then all of a sudden, when there's a conflict in a project or something, then it feels really hard to navigate because you kind of jumped over from client relationship to a friend relationship. And that can be really hard. So I think you have to pay attention to it. You have to be authentic to what feels right for you. You have to be okay with what feels right for the client, because some clients will not respond well if you're sending pictures of your family. And then you also have to be aware, like as that relationship grows and gets stronger and changes, like, okay, we're getting a little, like I'm not going to send my clients text messages after 5:00, or I'm not going to text message them, whatever that is for you. But you really have to be intentional about it and define it, because it can be really, really hard to kind of separate. I think now we've gotten into the world where we're so hyper connected. It's really easy to let go of the business first vibe a lot of times, because there's like so many ways to connect to each other.
That's true. And some of those ways to connect are very informal, like text or Slack or Discord or something like that. And then others feel a little more formal. Email feels more formal to me than a text message, right? And so you kind of have to know what medium you're in, and then when is it appropriate to communicate with people in that medium. And certainly, I think most people have gotten used to the idea of asynchronous work. And so if you message me on a certain, whatever that medium is, and it's after 5 or 6 p.m., I think for the most part, people understand it's okay if you get back to me the next morning. Now, I know that there are certain businesses and certain industries where you got to be on it all the time and you got to respond and be on top of it and answer those emails at 2 a.m. and do all of those types of things. And that is, you have to be aware of like where your working environment is and the client that you're working with and what their expectations are. And so that kind of raises a really simple question, which is if you work with someone who's new, it might be helpful to lay out this is my communication style. This is when I will be available. This is when I will connect with you. I'm not ignoring you or anything. If I don't get back to you at 6:30 p.m., if I don't get back to you until the next morning, I'm not ignoring you. We kind of have a 24-hour rule that we live by, which is if somebody reaches out to us, we're going to get back to them within 24 hours. It just helps to throw that in as a little piece of this is who I am and this is how I work and this is the process. And then it gives your client the opportunity to come back and say, hey, this is how we communicate. This is how we work within our office. And maybe that's great and it all fits together. And if it doesn't, then we can talk about what the expectation should be and if they need to shift either from the freelancer side or from the client side and some sort of compromise. But if you don't cover that up front, to me, that's a big opportunity for problems down the road.
Yeah, miscommunication. Well, and I think too, it's like we're thinking about how we can be memorable. Like if our first client interactions, or say we're onboarding a new client, if we have a overview, I think this could be part of everybody's onboarding where it's like, here's my communications, here's how I communicate, here's my expectations for you, here's what I'm available. Like making that really clear up front shows the client that you've thought through that whole piece, and that shows a lot of poise and that shows a lot of professionalism right up front, which I think is like so important to do when you're first starting either a new job or like a client relationship. Obviously, if it's a full-time job, like you got to deal like when they need you there and available. But you can also have that conversation when you're in an interview. It's like, what's the expectation for weekend work? What's the expectation for after hours communication? Like you can ask those questions so that you are really clear that that's important to you, and you want to make sure that you're either meeting their expectation for communication or you're letting them know your limitations around communication. So I think in either situation, it's a really great thing to cover up front.
100%. And I think that makes you memorable in a good way. No matter,
in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. Like we talked about some bad ways, like, talking on your phone while you're going through the drive-thru. But this is one in a good way. You're setting an expectation and a clear understanding, like communication is a priority to me. I want to be a good communicator to you as my client. And this is my communication style. This is when I'm available. These are the things. I don't run across a lot of people that have a clear communication plan as a solopreneur or as a freelancer. And if they presented that to us as we were speaking to them, this is my communication style. This is what I think that person would go right to the top of our list. Honestly, like, if we're talking to them and they lay that out and explain that and say like, I'm available between these hours and these are the platforms that I like to use. I'd be like, okay, you have your stuff together. You've thought about this.
Right.
You go to the top. And it is a way to hop straight up the line if you're looking for that. So that's definitely one for me that's really important. How can you express yourself as a self-employed person when you are your own brand, when you are the brand? Essentially, I think, and we can use a good example of this. I think, especially when you started Uncompany, you were the brand for Uncompany in a lot of ways. And as we've matured, it's you've become a little less of that, but you're still the face of it. You're still the one putting out the videos on LinkedIn. But in a lot of ways, you are the person out in front of Uncompany. So, so you probably you have a pretty good insight into how this might work. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I feel like this is even when you're not self-employed, I think we are a brand. We are our own businesses, even if we're a business that's partnering with full-time jobs or freelance jobs. But I think you have to think through all those different things the same way you would with a brand. So it's like, if I'm representing myself as a brand, then like, what personality do I want to put across? Like, am I overly professional? Am I a little bit Southern, a little bit fun and quirky? Am I overly creative? What am I putting out there? Like if people meet me, which is the brand, meet my business, what is their takeaway from, what I'm offering? And so I think you have to think through that and then think about how you're going to represent that across all of your places. So that includes obviously like your website, collateral, email, how you're messaging people, like what's the personality you're putting out in your emails. And then you also think about how you're presenting yourself. So we talked about this. It's like, okay, my brand is going to be red and black and white. I'm always going to wear red shoes to every client meeting. That is very branding. And I think it's really cool when freelancers do this well, because it makes them very distinct. And because it also allows people who are referring business to them, word of mouth business, to be like, you should meet this person. They can talk clearly about that person without that person needing to be there. Where I think freelancers can kind of disappear into the wallpaper of all the freelancers in the world is when they're kind of pseudo generic and they're like, I'm just doing this thing. I don't have a clear distinctive messaging. I don't have a clear point of view. And everyone's like, well, I'm doing copywriting. There's 1,000 copywriters. Yes, but what can you turn on that makes you uniquely different? I do copywriting with focusing on this type of business, or I'm a copywriter, with this kind of experience, or I'm a English copywriter, so I write with this kind of flair. There can be parts and components of the brand you're building that can reflect a unique personality. And then the fun part for me, I think, is like thinking about how that brand you're trying to build, how it manifests itself in all the pieces. Like, how does it manifest in how you're presenting? How does it manifest in what you're wearing? How does it manifest in like how you're showing up to conferences, what your website looks like? And I do think that that's like that, especially now since there's 52 million freelancers plus in the world. Like we have to live in a world where we're being distinctive because there's so many people out there who are all going after the same work. So I think it's really fun to do that. But I also think it's like that is business survival, growth, high level importance to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people talk about the word authenticity all the time and it's gotten cliche and it's gotten kind of boring. But when your personality is part of your brand and your brand is part of your personality and it's all kind of mixed in together, it does make you feel more real, more authentic. Like I'm working with an actual person. But let's be honest. Right now, you're also competing against machines for that same work a lot of times. And so part of it is they're hiring you as an individual, as a person with your own thoughts and your own experiences, your own background and your own tastes. And you want to be very clear and articulate about all of that, your experiences, tastes, and be memorable in that process. Otherwise, we might as well just plug that thing into an AI prompt and have it spit something out.
People want to work with a person. They do. They want to work with a person. Yeah.
They are hiring you and they're hiring you for a reason. And that's the part that you want to think about very clearly. What is it about me that makes me different, unique, whatever? So, you think about if somebody has a travel blog, let's say, or they like to write about food or something like that, then you can use that as a way in. Oh, well, maybe I have a food blog and I like to go around to all the pizza places in the triangle and rate all the pizza places or whatever it might be. How can I start to target the food and beverage industry, restaurants, those types of things? And maybe my unique take on being creative is really to work within that industry and within that, because that's where my interests lie. And I'm very, very knowledgeable about all of the different things. And I, bake my own sourdough bread and whatever. So I can, have those conversations. I'm struggling here because I'm not one of those foodie type people, but if you are, it makes you memorable and it makes it clear and it gives you an angle. And there's a whole entire giant industry that needs copywriting work related to food and beverage, as an example, or travel or athletics, or like you name the business. People need someone to write about it. People need someone to do some design or to make a video. They need all of that stuff. So don't be afraid to take your interests and turn that into part of your brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
and I think sometimes we shut those things down because you're like, but I'm not making money going around and eating pizza.
Yeah.
But again, like kind of go back to what we talked about before. It's like, but that can be your like icebreaker. Like, oh, what do you do besides work when you're talking to this person who's interviewing? What do you do besides this job? And they can be like, oh, I jet ski or whatever. And you can be like, oh, I actually would go around and like rate pizza places. It's a fun like topic of conversation to share and like show your humanity because people hire people. I think that's important to bring those aspects into your interview because it makes you interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I met and interviewed a filmmaker who works with outdoor brands and outdoor companies. And, they were a mountain biker, rock climber. That's what they did for fun. And so it was just natural for them to work with outdoor brands and to do outdoor things and shoot video outdoors and in these beautiful places. It just makes sense. We shouldn't turn that off, I think. I think that really, really helps us.
Yeah.
When it comes to being memorable and not being forgettable, do you feel like the stakes are higher for an individual freelancer? On the one hand, you're selling yourself, but on the other hand, you're really exploring what you're trying to get the client. You're trying to nail the client and get the job, get the project and all of that stuff. Is there some danger in that, do you think?
Yeah, I think we talked about this when we were coming up with this idea, but it's like there's the quit being forgettable. And then the flip side of that is like, don't be memorable for the wrong things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the danger sometimes when you're coming into a creative role, or maybe you just have a big personality and it's figuring out where the lines are, where you think, okay, I love to wear like crazy hats. And I do that. I mean, maybe there's a situation where you're going to an interview and that's not the right thing to bring. We were sharing some stories that I won't share on here to protect the innocent about some situations where I was like, they were very remembered, but not for great things. And it caused problems for them. So I do feel like as a freelancer, a lot of times we might get one shot at a client to make an impression. And so one of the things I say is always do your research before you walk into any kind of interview. Understand who you're talking to, what they've done, what role they fill, and maybe a few little personality insights if you can get them. I think where I see people fail, whether they're interviewing for full-time or for a freelance job, is they do zero background stuff. They just kind of come in cold and they just wing it.
Yeah.
And that is not a good way to enter any situation, let alone an interview. So I would say as freelancers, we have to know that we might get one shot at a discovery call with the client. We need to practice that discovery call or just practice that conversation and be prepared to be memorable in the right ways and not in the wrong ways, because that's hard to recover from.
Yeah. And to tag team onto that a little bit, if you do research on the people that you're going to be talking to, don't come off as a stalker or as a creep either.
Yeah,
Don't be,
there's two, but there's levels.
yeah. Like, so I see you have 3 children that are between you. Don't be that person either. But one of the things, if you find some insight into someone that's personal or that is connected to their business or whatever, a safer way to do that, instead of saying, I see you've done this, is to ask them a question and allow them to answer it. You already know what the answer to the question is going to be. So phrase it in the form of a question. If you see that someone is a fan of the Carolina Panthers football team, then you could ask that as part of your conversation, your chit chat part at the beginning, and just say like, hey, did you watch any good football this weekend? And then you can start to have that conversation without being like, so I was on your Instagram and I saw that you're a really big Carolina Panthers fan. Looks like you went to the game last Sunday. That comes off as a little creepy, but you can always ask a question, whether it's a business one or a personal one, and leave it a little bit open-ended. But if you already know what the answer is going to be, it helps you then. You can be prepared and you can say like, oh yeah, I saw that game too. And these are the, whatever that is, you can be prepared for their answer, knowing that 90% of the time you're going to be right. And people love it when you ask them questions. I think that's sort of the last thing for me is, if you want to be memorable, the best way to be memorable is to ask people questions and to let them talk, and for you to be as quiet as possible, because that says you're interested in me as a client, you're interested in what I need and what I'm trying to accomplish here. But if you run into a situation where there's a person presenting and they're talking and they're saying like, I've done this work and I do this, and they go down their whole resume and they go through their whole portfolio and they go through all the things, and you spend 30 minutes talking about yourself and never asking the client anything, the client's going to be like, I don't know what I just did there, but it feels like a waste of 30 minutes of my time. Like we did. So
yeah,
you can present yourself, practice that as like a 2-minute thing. But then after that, be prepared with some questions and ask good questions and let the client talk, take notes, and then respond back affirmatively to if they answer a question, use that in the next question and keep going and keep digging. And they will give you all the information, and they'll love you for it too. They'll be like, oh, they listened to me. They heard me, all those things.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, and the other thing I want not to do is don't start an interview by just like sitting back.
Right.
Like, obviously come in with research. Don't say, tell me about yourself. That's a bad way to start anything. It's like, no, you should know about me. But I also think it's like, start to steer, like expect, like they might take it over right away, but you might want to help them start to steer the conversation. Be like, okay, I'm excited to talk to you. How would you like to begin? And you could start to take over, like project manage that conversation a little bit if you feel like that's being left on your plate. Where I've seen sometimes where creatives have kind of fallen short is like they don't know how to lead a meeting. And so their expectation is that the client will lead it. And I think you can establish that up front. Like if you're sending the invite, you are leading the meeting. If you are putting the invite on the client's calendar, add an agenda and lead the meeting. If they're sending the agenda, then the expectation could be that they are leading the meeting. But you can always clarify that before you go in, because nothing's worse than starting a meeting where everyone's just kind of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So I think both on both sides, it's like understand who's leading it and understand that it's a conversation. You're not dictating your resume to them over the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing worse than sitting there listening to someone talk about themselves for 10, 15, 20 minutes and you get their whole life story and all that. Just be really concise, really clear, and get to those questions and get to the point. The point is, I'm here for a project. I'm here for a job. I'm here for the work. What are we going to do? What's the plan? Who's in charge? Make sure that when you leave a meeting, and these are all basic meeting things, but make sure that when you leave a meeting that there are tasks and takeaways and you know who's responsible for what. All of those things show that you're put together, you're professional, you're ready to roll. When are we going to talk again is always a good one. Or, I'll have this stuff back to you in 2 or 3 days. Make sure you do. And then I'll have some follow-up questions too. Anything you can do to continue the conversation is really, really helpful as well. So in those takeaways and that last stuff, even if you might be one of 4 or 5 different freelancers or people trying to get that particular project or job, if you kind of lead them to the next step and help them to see like, okay, I'll get this stuff back to you. And then I'm going to have some more questions. And then when are we going to talk again? Are we going to talk next Friday? If you can lead that part of the conversation a little bit with just a few questions and a plan of action, you're going to separate yourself from the other people who are waiting on the client to give you the plan of action.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. That's very important.
Yeah, it is really important. If you sort of like assume you're going to get the job and you act like you're going to get the job, it's harder for them to say no too. And I'm not saying be pushy about it, but I am saying like, have those takeaways, be confident, have that plan of action, make sure you schedule a follow-up meeting or a follow-up call. That way you know that you're getting back in touch with them in person. It's not, I'm going to follow up with an email and then we'll do this. It's like, okay, I'll follow up with an email, but let's go ahead and plan our next call. Are you available next Tuesday? That's something that Chris Leith has, talked to us and coached us on in terms of, following. Always get the follow-up call. Always schedule that while you're on the first one. And if you're competing with other people, if you're the one that's scheduling that call and no one else is scheduling it, they're just waiting on an email. Guess what? You've already got it on the books and the other people don't.
Yeah. Awesome.
Always be selling. Always be closing. ABC, right? Always be
closing.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
All right. Lightning round.
Lightning round. All right. Tell me your most painful interview story.
Oh, I've not interviewed a ton. Okay, so there was one I did interview for, and it was after I left my full-time job, and I was in the fear world where I was like, I don't know what to do. I shouldn't have left. I don't know. And so I went and interviewed with another agency, and they were not super kind to me. Like they made me sit for hours and wait for the interview, and I was like still working. And then I remember going into the interview and they were kind of bullying me a little bit. Like, we don't know if you really want to work here. We're not really sure. And at that point, I realized in that moment while I was in that interview, I'm like, no, you're right. I don't want to work here. And then I just got up and left because I was just, it was a realization that I was too afraid. I was letting fear hold me back from doing what I ultimately wanted to do. And by them kind of bullying me in that conversation, I was like, yeah, no, you're right. I don't want to work here. That was it wasn't painful. It was just awkward. It was very awkward.
Yeah, I don't have a specific painful interview story memory that's personal. I like to get to know people and I like to ask questions. And so even if I don't get a job, I still feel like the interview was fun. I don't know why. It's just, maybe I'm weird that way. But I've definitely been in some interviews where it was very clear I wasn't going to get the job. And I was just one of multiple people and they'd already settled on someone, whoever that was, in their head. And it was clear that I was just one of the boxes they needed to check that day to say that they'd interviewed 3 people or 5 people to make HR happy. And in those particular cases, it does get a little awkward because you're like, okay, we're doing the dance here. We're doing the thing.
Yeah.
But I've never actually called them out and been like, so it's pretty clear I'm not getting this job. Like, I don't think I can do that, but I've definitely felt that sense and it's disheartening and it's hard and it sucks. All right. Is it bad luck to wear pajama pants to an important Zoom meeting?
I wouldn't do that. I mean, my pajama pants are like probably yoga pants anyway, so it's a fine line. But I do believe like if you don't dress professionally, then it's hard for to convince your body that you're in a meeting. So, and I tell my kids this, so it's like, you wear pajamas, your body's like, I'm going to sleep. So I kind of hold fast to that. Like I get up every day and I'm getting dressed, whether or not I'm going to be on a call. But I think we have to hold ourselves to that. Otherwise, it's like super easy just to lounge around in pajamas all the time and just kind of would feel like, meh. Yeah. That's just me personally.
Yeah. I always feel better if I pretend I'm going to work, even if I'm going to my office.
Yes.
Get up in the morning. I put on a shirt. I put on, regular pants that are not my pajama pants, all of those types of things. I take a shower. I want to be awake, but it helps for me to have that transition of, okay, I'm putting on my clothes. I'm going to go to work now. Even if work is 20 feet away from my sofa, it doesn't matter. So I don't know if it's bad luck or good luck or whatever, but it's something that I don't do. And I definitely fell into that during the pandemic. And I think we all did. We fell into just wearing athleisure clothes and lounging around the house and working and everything. And so a couple of years ago, I made the conscious decision to try to stop wearing t-shirts to calls and to stop, and to actually like get dressed again. And I do feel 100%, 1,000% better, more ready to work, more ready to talk. I'm in my work mode when I'm in my office and I've got my, I've dressed up and I've fixed my hair even and whatever that stuff is, like all of that stuff. So what's your go-to statement when you're asked to share a fun fact about yourself?
Usually it's that I've been involved in a bank robbery.
Yeah, that's a good
You know
one.
that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a bank teller for a couple of years, and within the first year I was there, like the first 3 months I was there, we were held up. The bank was held up. So I think that's always a good. And everyone's like, "What? No," I'm like, "No, I mean, it's true. What happened?" So
Yeah.
that's mine. What about you?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, my 15 minutes of fame, I got to play guitar on stage at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville when I was in college. And I always joke that that's the greatest 20 minutes of my life. And in a lot of ways, it kind of was. I mean, yes, I love my wife and my wedding day was great. And the day that my son was born was amazing. But to me, like when I look back on my youth and everything like that, that was the moment. It was just kind of incredible to stand in the same spot on the same stage as like all these other greats, Johnny Cash, Beatles, and everybody else.
Pretty awesome.
And so for me, like I did it once. I was not able to get back there again, but it was still a really cool moment. So my fun fact is that I played guitar on stage at the Ryman.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all for today. And thanks so much for tuning in and quitting with us today. If you're new to the podcast, you can visit us at commandqpodcast.com. That's command, all one word, qpodcast.com. To learn more about joining our community of proud quitters. To check out our full episode library, you can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or even YouTube if you'd like to see our smiling faces. You can also see all kinds of weird things when we talk to Terry and the one before where I slumped down in my chair and there's, we're pretty animated on this thing.
Yeah.
Until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Maari.
And we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.